Why Scavengers Reign is a crazy work of art. As someone who has literally watched hundreds of animated television shows and runs an account in which I talk about and review said hundreds of shows, it isn't often that a cartoon sneaks up on me. Especially when that cartoon is a top-of-the-line adult animated sci-fi epic that's debuting its franchise for the first time. Well, actually, that was probably the case with Arcane too, which I'll be making a video on soon, by the way, but there's another recent show that also fits that exact same description. And that show is the hidden gem known as Scavengers Reign. Scavengers Reign launched on Max on the 19th of November, debuting its first season, which spanned over 12 episodes, releasing 3 new episodes each Thursday for 4 weeks. The show was created by Joseph Bennett alongside Charles Huetner, and it was actually based upon the duo's 2016 indie project entitled Scavengers. That's it, just Scavengers. But really, the fact that this show was 8 years in the making is pretty wild. And the Max original show actually holds up pretty true to the 2016 pilot, if you will. It pretty much maintains the overall art style, concept, and setting of the 8-minute short film, except with a much more professional and thorough coat of paint attached to it. And speaking of that concept, at its core, it may be one of the most straightforward of any modern cartoon of similar nature. Like, look at the IMDb synopsis. I've seen fortune cookies with more words in them. But I'll read it for you anyways. Scavengers Reign follows a crew of a damaged deep space freighter who are stranded on a beautiful but dangerous planet. Which, I mean, pretty much nails it. Since the show has such a simple concept, however, I had my doubts on whether the show could keep things interesting and keep my attention. I believe what the show had to do was lean on its 2 biggest strengths, and spoiler alert, I think it absolutely did, so let me share what I believe those 2 are. The first and most obvious being the setting. The quote, beautiful but dangerous planet. What's great about creating a totally new and fake alien planet is you can make your own rules and decisions on what the place features, how it behaves, and how it impacts our characters. With that setting being the main selling point of the show, it's no surprise that the creators took all the advantages and creative liberties to make the planet wildly creative with limitless possibilities. Every alien location and habitat we see is chock full of a crazy assortment, a cornucopia if you will, of peculiar creatures, wildlife, and organisms of all kinds. I really don't think I have seen a show display a whole new alien ecosystem as brilliantly as Scavengers Reign did. The world building is just about as immersive and inventive as it could possibly be. While the crazy new planet itself already sets the show apart, you gotta talk about the show's other strength, being our cast of characters, and specifically how they interact with the planet. Or probably more accurately, how the planet interacts with them, because, let's be real, the planet's its own character. For a planet that's never seen human life ever, it is beyond interesting to see the 2 collide. Now, what was quite possibly the part of the show that made it the most engaging was how our stories were organized. You see, the show starts with 3 escape pods having to crash land on the alien planet, so each of our episodes have A, B, and C plots that feature stories revolving around our 3 groups of survivors. Each group brings with it its own unique storyline and characters that by the end all come together to really flesh out the season and provide a sense of unity that really makes the show shine. And even after watching through the series, I still find it impossible to pick which of the 3 narratives I find most interesting and enjoy the most, but I will try and break them down for you through the use of the letter L. The show revolves around the letter L. Don't believe me? Well, allow me to explain. We start with Ozzy's story, which is one on learning. Learning how to survive without the help of another human companion. Learning how to adapt to her surroundings, and learning what the world that she is on is doing to her robot associate in Levi. And by the end of the series, learning how to show compassion to the friend she meets along the way whose master abandons him. And then Ursula's story is one on leading, as she landed down on the planet alongside the ship's leader in Sam. From day 1, Sam took primary control of their survival and mission to return their ship, with Ursula taking a backseat and gaining knowledge on the world around her. As the 2 journey on, we see Sam face 3 major trials, provided ever so thoughtfully to him by the planet, that force Ursula to take on a much more of a leadership position. One that she at first feels unworthy to have, but eventually learns to take hold of through Sam's willingness to give her the reins. The Scavengers Reigns. Lastly, you got Cayman's story, which is one on both love and loss. And oh boy, Cayman's story is absolutely brutal and depressing. We can add lament to the list of L's too, I guess. Cayman finds himself immediately in anguish as he grieves over the ship's crash being his fault, and how he left behind his wife on the ship to die as opposed to letting her on the escape pod with him. His sorrow was able to be exploited by a very interesting alien creature that turns Cayman into what is essentially his slave turned puppet turned life-sucking parasite of loneliness and hopelessness. Yeah. So F's in the chat for Cayman, I guess. But we're not done with the L's yet, no sir. In all three of our stories, and really the show as a whole, it can be summarized best with one word. Life. Ozzy originally couldn't find much significance in it, until she meets a woman on the meter who spoke to her on how life is short yet beautiful. That woman was the one who created the Levi robots, and who all their voices sounded like. So, once the alien world started to corrupt the Levi that was stranded with Ozzy, and caused that Levi to become a robot that could feel and think for itself, it resulted in Ozzy making the connection on what her friend was telling her from the beginning. It's pretty wild, and that was all before Ozzy meets the three people from the ship that picked up her distress signal. With her newfound value on life, she took a stand against the narcissistic leader of the group in Chris, and helped Barry realize that he has value and that he is his own independent person. And then you got Ursula and Sam. Remember how Sam kept getting himself into all sorts of crazy predicaments that resulted in the eventual shift in leadership roles? Well, those situations also eventually led to his selfless sacrifice of his own life due to the parasite inside of him altering his body and mind, causing him to want to murder Ursula. Because Sam could see the woman she was becoming and loved her too much to unintentionally and unwillingly kill her, he ended his own life and literally handed the keys over to Ursula in the form of his ID so she could complete their mission on her own for the two of them. And you can't forget about poor old Cayman. Cayman. His whole thing was on life, bro. He valued his life over the others on the ship. He disobeyed orders and risked the lives of everyone just to get what he wanted, which resulted in the crash landing of our characters, as well as the loss of his wife's life, which ruined his life and impacted the lives of our characters. And because of all of this, he felt his life had no purpose. So the creature took hold of his life and used him for his benefit in order to get all big and chonky. So with Cayman's will to live gone, he just rots away in the belly of this beast, all mopey and heartbroken. And then this is pretty much his life for the entire season, till the end, which his arc is finally brought full circle. We see him finding peace when creating and appreciating life in the garden, as opposed to killing, ruining, and or disregarding life like he did throughout the entire rest of his life prior. He couldn't have the life he wanted with his wife because he what he did in his life, so now he's just happy to have a life at all. It makes sense in my head. That was a lot of the word life, but just in case you're not convinced, the proof is in the pudding. And by pudding, I mean flour. Which flour? This flour. This flower appears as a symbol throughout the entire dang show. It appears along Levi, Sam, and Cayman's wife, as if it is this planet's unique and prominent way of representing and honoring the life that once flowed through the falling beings. And I'm no flower connoisseur, but I'm at least fairly certain this flower resembles none other than that of a lily. L. It's all connected. And I am in fact a genius. And all of that is just why Scavengers Reign is a crazy work of art.